The Palestinians asked for a vote to become a non-voting member status in the United Nations, and they won that vote in the General Assembly easily. Of course, the U.S., Israel, Canada, and Micronesia voted against it, so they've got a lot of international support on their side. So they were not happy with that, because how dare the Palestinians go the same exact path that Israel did to get their statehood? How dare the Palestinians do peaceful diplomatic routes to getting their statehood? So they decided to punish them in several ways. One of the things that they did was they are withholding $100 million in tax revenue. Now understand that this is money that was collected on behalf of the Palestinian Authority from West Bank importers. So it is money that is absolutely Palestinian money. But since the Palestinians do not have a state, they don't control their own borders, and oftentimes, as in this case, Israel collects the taxes on their behalf and then passes them onto the Palestinian Authority. Why do they do that? So they could have leverage like this, so that every once in a while they could say, well, we're just keeping your money, and that's that. And maybe we'll give it to you later if you kneel down and kiss our ring and do exactly as we tell you. But if you don't, we'll just flat out keep $100 million of your money. Now, if somebody takes $100 million of your money, that's usually considered theft. And by the way, it is done by force. So it's not like the Palestinians can come in and say, hey, I'd like to have the money now, and Israel goes to a court, etc., and gives it the money. No, they say, I'm not going to give you the money because I'm the one with the weapons. I'm not going to give you a state because I have more weapons than you. I am occupying you. But that kind of state force and violence is considered totally fine. They're a state, so they can do anything they like. And if they want to take $100 million of your money, they can take it. This daily, constant humiliation of the Palestinians goes on. And that's just part one. Part two is they said, okay, hey, you know what? We're going to build the E1 settlements. They're going to build 3,000 units of Jewish housing. Well, where is the E1 settlement? Well, it is right outside of Jerusalem and in the West Bank. Now, you see the green line on that map? That is the internationally recognized 1967 borders. That is what most of the world community, the great majority of the world community, believes should be the borders after there are two states. The red line is where the Israelis are building a giant wall. Gee, I wonder if they plan on taking all that land anyway. And then E1 would then cut off East Jerusalem from the West Bank, making a contiguous state for the Palestinians incredibly hard, according to some, nearly impossible. So thereby nearly destroying the two-state solution. That's why they had not built on E1 yet. This was their constant threat. And now apparently they are going to follow through on that threat. Oh, by the way, are there folks who live in that territory? Well, of course there are. There are Palestinian Bedouins, and they do farming. Who cares? They're going to be removed. There is some housing there. It will be bulldozed because Israel has decided that it is going to take that land. So sad day for those folks. But when they do that, and by the way, don't worry, they'll be allowed to visit their land once a year. Are they not merciful? If you try to come back any other time, you'll either be arrested or killed. That is state violence. That is state force. But that doesn't count. Only if you fight back is it called terrorism. So if one side does violence, it's perfectly acceptable apparently. When the other side does violence, it is the most reprehensible thing in the world. Now, my opinion is both forms of violence are reprehensible. You shouldn't take people's money. You shouldn't take their land. You shouldn't destroy their homes. You shouldn't take their state. You also shouldn't kill civilians on either side. But call me crazy. I believe in diplomacy. I believe in peace. I believe in peaceful solutions. But again, apparently that is unacceptable to the American, Canadian, Israeli, and Micronesians. Now, the rest of the world agrees. And by the way, these settlements are illegal according to international law. But apparently, Iran is a rogue nation, and their nuclear program has to be contained. But Israel breaking one international law after another is not important, and they are not a rogue nation. In fact, Glenn Greenwald wrote about that as well, and he said, you know that the United Nations has called, the General Assembly approved a resolution and called for Israel to open its nuclear program for inspection. Get a load of that irony. As Israel beats the war drums on Iran, saying, they won't even let us inspect their nuclear weapons program. Wait, hold on. A couple of things. Number one, they don't have a nuclear weapons program. They have a nuclear energy program, which is different. Second of all, they do allow the UN to inspect it. Now, on the other hand, Israel does have a nuclear weapons program. In fact, they have nuclear weapons, and they do not allow the United Nations to inspect it, even though the United Nations has voted overwhelmingly that it should be inspected. Now, remind me again who the rogue nation is? The one that we have to worry about, the one that we should maybe start a war with because, my God, they are so dangerous and they might have nuclear weapons one day and they are outside of international law. Which one was that again? So, one last thing about that. In Finland, they were going to have a summit where all the Arab nations and Iran had planned to attend the summit where they were going to talk about getting rid of nuclear weapons in all of the Middle East. The goal that I thought the U.S. and Israel were totally in favor of, right? Oh, we don't want Iran to have nuclear weapons, and I don't want them to have it. And we don't want nuclear weapons to destabilize the Middle East. You know who canceled the get-together? The U.S. They put pressure on Finland to end those talks because, of course, Israel has nuclear weapons. And the position that we want, as the United States, is that no, their enemies are not allowed to have those weapons, but Israel is allowed to have nuclear weapons. You are not allowed to inspect it. And that's just life. And by the way, the Palestinians have been under occupation for 60 years, and Israel can build anywhere they like, rub it in the Palestinian face, and take their money as well. But none of that counts. Remember, the bad guys are the Arabs. Oh, okay. Well, I'm glad at least they were logical.